You're listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NACS.
Welcome to Convenience Matters. My name is John Eichberger. I'm with NACS and the Fuels Institute, and on this program, we talk about everything related to convenience. 160 million Americans shop at a convenience store every single day. About 50 million Americans fuel up at a convenience store every single day. So if it is important to a convenience store, it is likely important to your daily life as well. And I'm joined today by my co-host,
Mr. Donovan Woods here from the Fuels Institute as well as NACS. Good to be here, John.
And today we're going to be talking with Pete Davis, who is one of the founders of a company called GreenPrint. We're going to be talking about an innovative way they are providing retailers an opportunity to give back to their communities. So, Pete, thank you very much for joining us on Convenience Matters. How you doing?
I'm great, John. Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about GreenPrint. I mean, you and I have talked about this a long time. You are a partner of the Fuels Institute, and you guys have been doing a lot of work. I see you guys in the news all the time. It's spreading out and getting bigger. But for a lot of people, the name itself doesn't tell you exactly what it is you do. So walk us through a little bit about what GreenPrint is, how you guys got started, and what it is you're trying to achieve here.
Great, thank you. Yes, so GreenPrint, we build and run reduced emission fuel programs for convenience store chains and fuel marketers. And basically what we're doing is for every gallon of fuel they sell, we calculate the carbon emissions that come out of the tailpipe. And then we invest in large-scale projects to neutralize that carbon in the atmosphere, and we plant trees in the local community.
So,
and basically, go ahead.
So does that mean that you guys, for each type of product being sold, you guys have done an independent calculation, so diesel fuel or an E10 mixture or anything like that?
Exactly. It's by grade of fuel, and if we have the vehicle, it's by vehicle type also. In a lot of cases, at the convenience store, we don't know what kind of vehicle someone's driving, so we do it based on the average vehicle. Mm-hmm. But in our fleet program, we work with a number of fleets, and in our fleet program, we do it based on the actual fuel type and vehicle type being driven. And so we're calculating and reducing emissions in the atmosphere after the fact. And so what we're finding, so I spent most of my career, about 20 years of my career in the loyalty business, building and running frequent flyer mile programs and credit card and debit card reward programs for airlines like Delta and retailers like Kroger. And in a lot of respects, the program we're running now for consumers and for our clients is a form of loyalty program. Consumers are not earning points or miles, but it's a way for our partners to engage with customers at a higher level in kind of a purpose-driven marketing type approach. Build loyalty and goodwill in the community, and differentiate themselves from their competition.
So basically trying to get the consumers, hey, you know what, this retailer is helping offset the emissions from my car, maybe I should frequent them. That's kind of the idea?
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of human nature to want to do the right thing, as long as it's not too expensive or too difficult. And so we make it easy for consumers to do the right thing just by filling up at our clients.
That your comment there is spot on. I've been talking to reporters and legislators for 17 years about gas retailers, and I always tell them, we ask consumers all the time, would you be willing to spend more for a fuel that protects the environment? Oh, absolutely. But what we find is by the time they get to the pump, the only green they care about is in their wallet. So it's definitely a spot on statement you just made. Exactly.
When a good analogy is, and I think you're probably about my age, John, but when we were growing up, almost no one recycled because it was really difficult to do, right? You had to find a recycling depot in your town, and you'd have to kind of save up all your stuff and then drive it there once a week. And now, like 90% of consumers in the U.S. recycle because it's relatively easy, right? It's not quite as easy as just throwing something in the trash. You have to rinse it out and maybe take a few extra steps to the blue bin, but really all you have to do is go to the blue bin. And then after you do it, you get kind of warm and fuzzy that you just did something good. And so we like to, suggest that we're making our clients the blue bin on the corner. And so all consumers have to do is drive an extra block and make a left-hand turn across the intersection. And then our clients, neutralize their emissions.
So warm and fuzzy. We're selling fuel and it's warm and fuzzy. That's awesome, man. So when you think about that, I mean, what is, obviously we know transportation is a huge source of carbon emissions. You mentioned you guys invest in large-scale projects. What type of things can help offset that? I mean, if I buy, I drive a lot. I drive 25, 30,000 miles a year, so I probably buy 1,000, 1,500 gallons of fuel a year. My contribution would go to what? I mean, how can I reduce my footprint?
Yeah, it's a great question. So you don't have to do anything besides buying your fuel from one of our clients. So, for example, if you're in Indianapolis and you fill up at a Rickers location, we're going to calculate and neutralize your emissions, and we do that in a number of different ways. The most visible to you in Indianapolis in that example is we'll plant trees in the local community. And so, we all learn in elementary school that, trees breathe in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen. And so that's a great way for a client to build, community ties and give back to the community and also neutralize emissions. And then in addition to that, we invest in, probably 10 different classes of carbon mitigation projects, from large-scale forestry projects to investing in alternative energy like solar power and hydroelectric and wind power projects, to some kind of industrial and landfill kind of methane gas capture projects that all kind of sequester carbon emissions out of the atmosphere. And we do it proportionate to the emissions coming out of the tailpipe, and it's all certified by the Arbor Day Foundation and a top 3 accounting firm that we work with to kind of certify all the calculations and results.
So when you said certified, that's the first thing I was thinking about. As a consumer, is there a place I can actually go see where these trees are being planted, or is the C-store itself going to have a ton of trees in the background in the next 10 or 15 years? What's that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we customize, I think it's, based on my background running loyalty programs, and we would build them and kind of customize them for clients. So we customize this program for our clients. And we probably have 8 different programs or so in market now. And I'll use that Rickers Replenish as an example because I used it earlier. So we have built a program for Rickers called Rickers Replenish. And there's a website, rickersreplenish.com, that has all the details of the projects and the calculations that are going on and basically what happens behind the scenes to run the program. And then we have other programs. So for our client, Alon, it's called Strive. I think it's strivefuel.com, and then all the details on that program are there, along with the local projects that we invest in.
And that makes sense, because this seems to be a win-win for the C-store owner as well, because when you think about what millennials want, I hate saying that word. I know, John, you hate that word, but with those who are younger than me, what they want to see are things or products they can believe in.
That's a lot of people who are younger than you, Donovan.
That's a lot of people now. It didn't used to be that way. Oh, it's a terrible thing to be not one of the younger people in the office anymore. But I think about a company like Tom's. I think they're not the most eye-catching shoes, but yet my brother and his friends wear them because they know it gives back somewhere else. So is that kind of I don't want to say pitch, but is that something that the C-store owner tries to buy into in terms of knowing their customers may want to know what they're doing to give back?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's all about purpose-driven marketing these days, and it actually extends much more broadly than millennials, but they're the perfect, kind of example demographic. We're finding the program resonates with almost any group, whether it's men or women or different religions, different races, and even age profiles. But we kind of live in a purpose-driven economy. And so, this program is a perfect way to meet some unmet needs in the fuel category. I've heard a number of folks, and I think I'm starting to believe this also, in the fuel space say, the kind of one standing big risk to the industry out there now is emissions, right? It used to be supply and demand and the prospect of the price of oil, going above $100 a barrel, and the fact that we had, no domestic supply for oil. And today, kind of the lone standing kind of largest risk out there is the fact that, when we burn fossil fuels, we release emissions, and there's a whole movement, about greenhouse gases causing climate change. Without opining on that, a lot of people believe it, and so it impacts demand. So we're meeting an unmet need, enabling our customers to address kind of one outstanding kind of risk factor or concern for the product they're selling, and helping them kind of build loyalty and attract kind of a coveted demographic.
So we're talking about marketing, and if you take what you guys are doing, it's really a marketing plan for retailers to communicate with their customers. Now, it brings the cause under this, and if we're talking about purpose-based marketing, there are potential landfalls whenever you try to go forward with purpose-based marketing. I equate it to promoting a candidate for a public office. A lot of retailers won't do that because if it's a 50-50 split in your demographics, you're going to alienate half of your potential customers while you make half of them happy. Thinking about the election results of 2016 and recognizing there is a substantial percentage of the population that could possibly be ascribed to the theory that human activity is not contributing to climate change, is there any possible type of backlash that a retailer might experience if they promote this too heavily? Or is there a way that the consumer is able to say, you know what, I'm not supporting that? I only contribute to charities and causes I care about, and I'm not going to let my purchase support a cause that I don't care about.
Yeah, that's a great question. We've been in market for about 2.5 years, and we're at like 350 locations, and we have not had one piece of negative kind of feedback or pushback like that. I think, we're not asking customers to support a cause or give back to a cause. We're just kind of doing it automatically on their behalf. And everyone that buys fuel, emissions is relevant to. So they might not care. They might not, believe that humans have a hand to play in global warming. But consumers buy a gallon of fuel, they burn it, and they release emissions, and we're neutralizing the emissions. It's a little bit. We like to think of it as a product attribute. And so, just like when you buy eggs, and if you buy eggs from free-range chickens, the fact that they're humanely treated chickens is kind of relevant to the egg. We're not suggesting people buy fuel. We're going to support a charity that has nothing to do with the fuel purchase.
All right. So really, it's an additive value, but it's not one that is going to impose additional cost to the consumer. The consumer basically, if I'm buying gas, I'm buying gas because I need it, and the competitive structure of the market remains viable for the retailer. But for those that have that more purpose-driven bent to them on this issue, it gives them an extra hook.
Absolutely.
I think it ties in well, Donovan, to the whole NACS idea of community. The refresh initiative NACS has launched in terms of convenience, community, and nutrition and all those things. Really ties. Retailers are trying so hard to make sure their customers understand, hey, you know what? We're not just here. We're part of the world. We're part of your community. We're here for you. And I think anything that can provide that retailer that edge to make that more emotional connection with the customer is important.
Absolutely. Think about what you just said. We're part of your neighborhood. We don't run away when problems are there. We're actually the first ones open, last ones to close, if we close at all. But I would think that as a C-store owner, or you kind of puts fuels in a positive light. Right? You're thinking if I actually use this product, then it's actually going to benefit. Is that kind of what people think, Pete?
Yeah, it certainly neutralize. I don't know that we're going to make someone feel good about, releasing emissions, but we're going to neutralize them in the atmosphere. And back to your point, John, we enable, a convenience store to extend that kind of fast, healthy, fresh food, that whole messaging out to the forecourt. And it impacts, about half of their dollar sales. We enable them to kind of extend that same messaging outward.
It's interesting. Projects like this, Donovan, are important because with the sustained lower price of gas in the last couple of years, customers just aren't shopping like they used to. They get much more into a routine of, it's $2, $2.25, $2.30. It ain't $4, so correct. Why do I need to worry about this? So it's really important to start to differentiate yourself at the retail side. And what we've told retailers for the last year or so is now is the perfect opportunity to invest and establish that niche, that reputation that is independent of price. And if prices go back up and customers start shopping around, maybe you have embedded in their customer mindset that additional value attribute that you invested in during the low price market. And you got to think about this, man. Anytime that prices go up and your customers are shopping around, you want an edge. You want some sort of hook, whatever it might be. So for Pete, for the retailers you've signed up to, what has been their primary motivation? What have you heard from them that they've really said, we need to do something and we're selecting this, but what's been their kind of primary go-to-market motivation?
Yeah, great question. I would say the consistent theme is it's a competitive differentiator. So we work with one fuel marketer in a city or MSA exclusively, and that's by design because we know that the product works well as a competitive differentiator. And then I would say beyond that, some clients look at it as a way to build loyalty and goodwill in the community and be a competitive differentiator. Others look at it as a way to increase fuel volume, which we're able to measure. One of our larger clients is realizing a 6% increase in fuel volume today versus first quarter last year, and they're earning higher margins. So they've shifted their pricing strategy to kind of be more of a value-based pricing strategy versus kind of a race to the bottom and only competing on price. And so they're able to kind of sell more fuel, earn slightly higher margins, and provide a really positive benefit to their consumers in the local community. But it kind of just depends on what the client's goals are.
How do you respond if somebody were to say, you know what, okay, so I buy a couple of gallons of gasoline and you plant a couple of trees. You're just greenwashing. It's just marketing gimmickry. You're not really making a difference. What game are you playing? Or how do you respond to the cynics and the aggressive skeptics out there that may challenge the model you're putting forth?
They don't exist, do they?
No, I'm just making. They're a figment of my imagination.
I would say that we're not the only solution out there. So we are doing something positive and concrete. It's scientifically measurable, and it's certified. So I can measure the amount of carbon that our clients and their customers are releasing. I can prove that I'm sequestering, that same amount of carbon out of the atmosphere scientifically. But it's certainly not the only solution that we as a industry or species ought to be bringing to the table to solve, our emissions issue. And so there are brighter minds than myself thinking through what the future might hold, whether it's, Tesla and electric vehicles or hydrogen-powered vehicles or some sort of other type of vehicle and fuel that remains to be seen. We like to think of ourselves as a bridge to the future that is immediately applicable to, everyone out there in the current fleet driving current vehicles. We're not asking someone to adopt something new. We're just bringing a solution to the table that's kind of easy to implement. That's part of the solution.
Donovan, one of the things we talk about with the adoption of alternative technology, alternative vehicles and fuels is that need to make it so seamless for the customer.
Right.
If you have to teach the consumer to do something different,
won't do it.
Huge hurdle. And there'll be a few that do it, but the rest of us are going to say, I am way too lazy. We won't say that. We'll say all the excuses possible. But the bottom line is we're way too lazy to make any changes to our behavior. So I think there's something fundamental for retailers to learn from this experience that you're describing for us, Pete, is how do you provide a emotional value to the customer without them having to do anything different? And that's something I think retailers need to think about is how do you demonstrate your commitment to community, make your customers feel like they're doing something even though they've not done anything different.
Right.
And that's something I think we all struggle with.
Make it frictionless.
Make it what?
Make it frictionless.
Right. There's enough friction out there in behaviors and attitudes. We don't need to add to it in their commerce. So, Pete with GreenPrint, thank you very much for joining us on Convenience Matters. And thank you guys for listening. We will talk to you on the next podcast.
You've been listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by Nax. For more information, go to naxonline.com.